Sorry, Fred, I forgot to start the recording there. The state doesn't say how much the gas is actually going to cost, the commodity is going to cost, right? The market sets the price of the commodity, but the government is going to regulate these other costs for delivery and taxes and that sort of thing. Again, on the electric side, the majority of us are going to see our electricity coming from ComEd or Commonwealth Edison. We might, if we're downstate, see it from Ameren or Mid-America. There are a couple places in the Chicago metropolitan area where the city itself provides the electrical service. Those are called municipals or munis. If you happen to be in Winnetka on the North Shore, Winnetka is a muni. I think Batavia and the western suburbs is a muni as well. Naperville is a muni. But the majority of us are probably getting our electricity from Commonwealth Edison, right? Again, a lot of this happened many years ago, but in the state of Illinois, utilities are what's called deregulated, right? So just like our phone company, when I was a little kid, there was only one company that provided phone service. You know, now we have the ability to shop around to try to get the best phone service. We have the ability to shop around and try to get the best cable deal. We also, if we so choose, we can shop around on our natural gas or electricity, right? We can unbundle or we can separate the commodity from the delivery. We can shop for that commodity if we so choose. And then the delivery of that commodity, right? The electrons or the therms of energy, delivery is still provided by a regulated utility. Right, again, here's a typical residential electric bill, kind of same general setup here. We have a rate structure, right? Rate structure is something that's negotiated or worked out between the regulated utility and the regulatory body in the state of Illinois. We have a commodity cost, right? That's how much that unit of energy actually costs. And then we have the charges to deliver that to us, as well as taxes and fees. Right? So on both of our natural gas and our electric bills, we have these efficiency programs, or some places they call them societal benefits charges. Right? In essence, what the utilities are doing is they're taking a little bit of money from your bill and they're putting it into a pot to help support these various rebate programs. Right? So why do the utilities do this? Well, they do this because the state, you know, the regulated, excuse me, regulated utilities, so the state tells them that, you know, they have to offer these programs. How do they work? Again, utilities typically will have various programs, you know, to, in this case, retire your old fridge, or you might see if you go to the Home Depot and shop for light bulbs, you might see that the cost of the light bulb, of the LED or the compact fluorescent light bulb is subsidized by the utility rebate program, right? In the case when my wife and I did the installation in our house a couple years ago, we got a rebate for that to help support the cost of that work. So how do you benefit? From my perspective, right, this is like excuse me, this is like guys' night out poker or girls' night out poker, right? You get together with a couple of your friends, everybody throws $5 in the pot in the middle, and if at the end of the night you come out with 7 or 8 or $10 in your pocket, then you're up, right? You threw 5 in the pot and you came home with 10. That was a fun night of guys' night out poker, right? Think of a utility rebate program in the same way, right? You as a ratepayer are paying into a pot of money, so certainly it's to your benefit to try to find ways to take money out of the pot by taking advantage of some of these utility rebate programs. Right, so in the case of deregulation in the state of Illinois, it allows us to unbundle, as I said, the commodity and the delivery to shop for that commodity. Now, I personally think that it's hard, it's difficult, it's confusing. So I actually don't do this, right? This is what I do for a living, and to be honest, it's confusing and there's a lot of risk. So, you know, if you want to do this, knock yourself out. Now, in the case of the town that I live in, Oak Park, we have a municipal aggregation program. So in the case of our electricity, the village of Oak Park has bundled all the electrical consumers in our village together and gone out and shopped for a deal on our behalf. So in this case, it makes sense. Someone who has the ability and can bundle that together is shopping on my behalf. So that's a good thing. I'm happy that my village does that. Right, all these units of energy, the electricity, the oil, natural gas, again, these are all commodities. Commodities are subject to the market laws of supply and demand. Right, if you've been reading in the newspaper of late, right, energy prices, oil, gasoline prices are going up. Right, all the, you know, when we had the pandemic, a lot of I'd have to look, Tyler. I believe it is now MC squared. I'm looking at a pile of paper in my on the side of my desk here, Tyler. So Oak Park's energy supplier is MC squared. So on the ComEd bill that we receive every month, we have a bit of it that goes to MC squared and a bit of it that goes to ComEd. So again, if you've been reading in the paper, right, gasoline prices are up, oil prices are up. People are saying that home heating prices are going to be up, right? These are all things that are subject to the market laws of supply and demand, right? So we had a pandemic, just like computer chips and kids' toys for Christmas. You know, the market got out of whack with the pandemic, and things are going to take a little while to settle out again. So certain energy commodities can be stored, right? Oil is an example of an energy commodity that can be stored, right? If you drive east of here on 80-90, right, you go through northern Indiana, you see all these oil tanks all over the place, right? So we can store oil. We can use that storage to kind of, you know, smooth out the fluctuations in supply and demand. We can do the same thing on the natural gas side, right? You don't see this because this is happening underground, but natural gas utilities can store some of that natural gas and smooth out the seasonal differences in consumption, right? In the summertime, not many people are using natural gas. So Nicor or Peoples Gas are buying natural gas in the market and they're storing it. And they're going to pull some of that gas out of storage when the winter time comes and everyone wants to heat their house. Right? Well, I say that to set that off against electricity, right? Electricity is something that, as of now, we don't really have a good way of providing long-term, large-scale storage of electricity. So electricity supply and demand are balanced essentially in real time on the electric grid. So we'll see what that means in terms of the way things are going in the electric market, right? So oil and natural gas, those energy commodities can be stored. Electricity is much more difficult to store, right? We saw Tyler told us last week about batteries, right? We have some limited capability of storing electricity in batteries, right? We're going to have to figure out a way to store a lot more when we get more renewables on the grid. So what are some of the ways that we attempt to balance this supply and demand on the electrical grid? What do we do now? Well, one thing we do now is we have rate structures that charge different costs for electricity different times of the day. We typically don't see that in the residential market, although we can, right? If you go to ComEd, you do have the option of signing up for a time of use rate, but most of us don't. Most of us just pay the same rate of electricity, irrespective of what time of day it is. Now, in the future, things may be differently, right? Electricity may cost more, on a summer afternoon than it does in the middle of the night or in the middle of the winter when the demand for electricity is a lot lower. Again, in a commercial electric bill, we're typically going to have different rates. Electricity is going to have a different rate attached to it at different times of the day and potentially different seasons. Again, this is part of the way that the electric utility is trying to help you manage supply and demand. Right, you've seen our 3 pillars of decarbonization, right? We just talked about insulation, right? So we have to improve levels of insulation. That's energy efficiency. We have to have on-site renewables, and we also have to have electrification, right? We need to have more renewables on the electric grid, right? And that's going to provide a challenge to us because we have to now figure out a better way of managing supply and demand with renewable sources of energy that tend to be intermittent, right? Solar and wind. Wind's not blowing all the time, the sun's not shining all the time. So if we're going to get our energy from renewables, we have to start figuring some of these things out. Right, we're going to be looking to ways to decarbonize our buildings, right? Decarbonization assumes that electricity from renewable sources will replace fossil fuels. So decarbonization means that in the future, we may have heat pumps for heating rather than furnaces and boilers. We might have induction stoves rather than gas stoves. Right? We're going to have electric vehicles rather than internal combustion engines. Right? We might see electric buses and trucks replacing diesel. Increased mass transit replacing the use of private cars. Right? We hopefully also have homes and buildings that have on-site solar. Right? All these things, electrifying all these things require that the renewable energy that we're collecting are still delivered via the electric grid. Right? So what we do here, we're going to figure out ways of getting fossil fuels out of our buildings, right? We're going to figure out heat pumps and induction cooking and make our buildings more efficient so we can slowly get the natural gas out of our buildings, the fossil fuels out of our buildings, and replace them with electric sources. In parallel, other folks, maybe us, maybe somebody else, is going to figure out how to get all that fossil fuels out of the electric grid and replace it with renewables. Right? It's a interesting times, interesting challenges that we have ahead of us here. All these things will all tie together on the electric grid. Right? We have our We have our wind power, we have our photovoltaics. We're going to see more of this stuff and probably less, let me turn the pointer on here, less coal-fired or natural gas-fired power plants. But all these things are all going to now be interacting with each other on the electric grid or on the smart grid. So renewable energy sources, I said, are by nature intermittent. So as we get more and more renewables on the grid, balancing that supply and demand is going to become more of a challenge, right? This is what's happening in the state of California, right? They call this the duck curve. It's probably a little hard to see here, but as more and more people have installed photovoltaics in California, during the daytime hours, the load on the net load remaining on the utility grid continues to decrease. But what happens in the, as we get closer to the evening hours, right, the sun starts to set, the production of all that PV drops off. And oh, by the way, people are getting home from work, they're punching on their air conditioners. Right, all of a sudden we have a tremendous buildup in the load that utility has to provide, right? This is a challenge that the utility folks in California are dealing with, right? And we'll see the same thing here in the state of Illinois in the coming years as we start to put more renewables in our grid as well, right? So what are some of the things we can do about it? Right, we're going to have maybe smart meters, smart grid, and we'll see what all these things are, and possibly some energy storage, either on site, right, in our individual homes, or possibly at a utility scale. So let's see what all these things mean. Again, most of us are probably at this point, all of us in the ComEd service territory have what's called a smart meter, right? So we have this, again, we may not have thought about it, but outside in our home, we have these meters that the utility can communicate with on a real-time basis, and also we can communicate with to get more information about our consumption. The other thing that this meter allows is more detailed information, right? It used to be that your electric meter got read once a day, or once a month, excuse me. But now that information is available in it, probably on a day+1 basis. The other is that now the smart meter allows the utility to have either peak day pricing or real-time pricing, right? It may get to the point where electricity is going to cost more certain times of the day or certain times of the year, depending on what the load on the grid is. Right, you have tools available to you. I think like this guy here on the left, that's a display device that ties into your smart meter and allows you to get real-time information about how much electricity your home is using. Right, and we have the same thing. I had a picture before about the Nest thermostat. Again, these are tools that allow you to better manage the electricity or the energy usage of your home. Right. Here's another tool here. These are Wi-Fi enabled lighting products. Again, you can have the lights in your house talking to a little Wi-Fi widget, and then have the ability to turn the lights on and off or dim the lights from your smartphone. I don't have it in my house yet, but it's stuff that's out there. where this is all going. Again, all these meters and appliances are all Wi-Fi enabled. And we ultimately have the ability to have things that respond to price signals, right? So maybe, let's say you have an electric dryer or an air conditioner. Maybe you set your dryer up so the dryer doesn't run if the electricity is too expensive. Or maybe you cut your air conditioner off in the middle of the afternoon when electricity is too expensive, right? These are all things that are coming to help us manage supply and demand on the grid, to help us manage this electrification of our homes and decarbonization of the grid, right? This is all stuff that we're going to see in the next couple of years. Right? Here's another thing that we might be seeing, right? This is in-home battery storage. Again, we don't see this much in Illinois yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. Maybe you guys are putting some battery storage units in with some of the PV design. But certainly in other parts of the country, probably California in particular, people are doing PV systems with battery storage just because that allows you to charge up that battery with your PV and ride through the times when utility costs are very high, or the battery allows you to, again, in California, right, you have utility outages due to wildfires, allows your home to ride through that outage, right? My sister-in-law lives in Northern California, right? And she put a bunch of batteries in her house to give her backup in the event of an outage, right? We don't have that problem in Illinois yet, but this might become economically feasible in the near future. So this was energy storage on the scale of an individual home. It's a little hard to see, but this is the other place that we are starting to see energy storage, right? This is a utility scale battery storage. So somewhere, I can't remember where this picture was taken, but utilities may be installing these large batteries to, again, essentially allow them to balance supply and demand. Here's one that I thought was pretty interesting. This is Ford's new EV, their F-150, right? So if any of you are truck people, Ford is soon going to be bringing to market a electrified version of the F-150, right? A hugely popular vehicle. And part of their pitch for it is that, well, two pitches for it. Number one, you see pictures of Ford's promotional materials, right? You see a contractor who's out in the field, who's powering up all his saws and his field tools from the battery in his F-150. That's pretty slick. The other thing that's pretty slick is Ford claiming that you can use that battery in your car to provide backup power in the event that your lights go out, right? Again, this is the direction we're moving in, right? These are things that are coming in the future. Again, the same thing, right? We theoretically, if a lot of us have electric vehicles, yeah, I think it's pretty cool too, Matt. I mean, I'm not if any of you are so inclined, go look up the I'm sure you can find YouTube videos that show the various features of this. I mean, I think it's pretty slick. I'm not going to run out and put a couple $1,000 down to put a deposit on it, but a lot of people have already done it. I think that the interesting thing for this is that the interesting thing that Ford is trying to do is take a what I would call a mass market vehicle and electrify it, right? So far we've had, you know, Priuses and small vehicles be electrified, and that's not necessarily moving the needle in terms of, you know, replacing internal combustion engines with EVs. So it'll be interesting to see how successful Ford is in convincing people who want to buy trucks to move to a electrified version of their F-150. This will be interesting to see how this all goes. The other way that people have at least talked about it is having electric vehicles be a source of storage, right? So right now, like me, my wife and I have a plug-in hybrid, right? So sometimes I'm out if I'm looking for a place to charge, I look for I have an app on my phone where I can see where there's a charge point charging station, and I might pull up and charge my car. But in the future, folks are saying, well, maybe you can sell some of that energy back to the grid, right? Maybe it's you have your Tesla, it's got a full charge, and maybe at that particular point in time, you know, the value of that storage on the grid is such that you want to plug your Tesla in and sell energy back to the grid. Again, this stuff isn't all figured out yet, but that's the way things are going. But really the bottom line here is that, you know, as we electrify the grid, we have to come up with new and different ways of balancing supply and demand because of the intermittent nature of wind and solar. That's kind of the bottom line here, right? These are things that we will see in the coming years. Make sense? Any questions? Okay, yeah, I'll see, Chris, maybe you're going to go out and you're going to go put your money down and buy an F-150 Lightning. You know, you can peel it around the parking lot at Triton. Yeah, send me some money. You and me both, pal. So anyways, we're getting close to the, yeah, I wish. We're getting close to the end here. I don't want to start something new, so I will turn off the recording. If any folks have any